Good morning, real life. How are we doing this morning? Are we good? Yes. I just want to say thank you for praying for our students through camp season. We did kids camp, VBS, and now 2 youth camps. We got home on Friday. And I just want to give a special call out, Tenji. I know you're in here. You can only raise one of your arms. There he is. Tenji. Be praying for Tenji. He has surgery on Tuesday. Rec got him on Thursday. So Tenji, we're glad you're here. He broke his collarbone in 2 places, but we are so glad you are here this morning, and we're praying for you. And like your dad said, if you don't break a bone in rec, are you really trying? I don't know. So Tenji was trying. So be praying for Tenji. We're glad he's here this morning. From our group, we had 30 kids go to youth camps this year. As a large camp, there were just a lot of people there. We'll say there were around 1,500. It was a lot of kids. It was awesome. That was a great week. So thank you for your prayers. And thank you for those of you that help scholarship kids to go to camp. We had several kids and teens that were able to go to camp because of people in this room. So thank you so much for helping make that happen for them. That's a big deal. This morning, we are super excited. We have a guest speaker with us this morning. We have Caleb and Brittany Monson here this morning. We were chatting a couple minutes ago. We've known each other for a long time. They were back in 7 years ago. They were in youth ministry, so we knew each other then. And the thing that I love about Caleb and Brittany is you're not going to meet 2 people who are more passionate about meeting people in hard places, about meeting people who really just need to experience the freedom of God and the love of Christ in a very real, tangible way as they're working through really, really hard things. And that's what they've been doing for the past 7 years. And he now works with an organization. They work with an organization called Operation for Freedom. And Caleb, if you want to come on up, we're going to hear from him today and hear about what God is doing through him and the ministry that they are a part of. So give it up for Caleb as he comes this morning.
Thank you so much for your kind words. That was appreciated. Great to be with you all this morning. Are you guys excited? All right. I usually ask, are you awake, alive, and excited? And hopefully at least one of those, you're alive. All right. We'll work on the awake and the excited part. But it is great to be here. Thank you, Pastor Jim, for inviting us down to share about our ministry, what God has called us to do for the last 7 years, and hopefully for a lot more years to go. We're going to talk about a hard topic today. I'm going to give you a forewarning. We are talking about human trafficking. It's a hard topic that we need to face in our country, a topic that we can't just pretend doesn't exist anymore. For a long time we did, and now we are facing the reality that it's actually been here the entire time. But before I get into preaching too much, I want to introduce my family. There may be a picture on the screen. There might not be for security reasons, but I'm married, been married for going on 6 years, and we have 2 boys, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So we are not sleeping, and it's a great time, right? So we're working on the awake part is what we're working on right now. But there is our family picture. They are with Grandpa and Grandma this weekend having a blast. So that is us. We live in Minnesota, so we are from Minnesota. We love this state. And just excited to, again, share about what God has called us to. So when we think about human trafficking, a lot of us think, especially if you are over the age of 50, you can decide if that's you or not, okay? I'm not going to ask. But if you are in the older group, you've been hearing about human trafficking for probably most of your life, but it was always about Thailand and Cambodia and Amsterdam, am I right? For most of your life, you didn't even imagine that it could be happening in your town, let alone your country. Until about 10 years ago, when the conversation began of realizing, wait a minute, maybe it is happening here. And we realized it wasn't just a maybe, it definitely is. In fact, the U.S. is in the top 3 worst countries every single year for human trafficking. It's not just kind of an issue. It's a major problem, church. It's something that we can no longer ignore. I'm going to share a couple more statistics with you this morning. That it's estimated that $150 billion a year is made in the world of human trafficking. I actually just saw a new research post come out that they're estimating it's $230 billion now this year. Now, if you're like me, that's a really big number that us common people don't understand, right? Anybody ever seen $1 million in a briefcase before? If you have, I have a great ministry I want to tell you about this morning, okay? But for us common people, pick 3 of your favorite or least favorite biggest companies that you can think of, right? Nike, Amazon, Google, Apple, all these different companies. If you pick 3 of those companies, they will not profit $150 billion together this year. That's the magnitude of what we're facing. And there's this idea sometimes that we need to be careful when we talk about this issue, like we want to wait until our kids are older. Now, there's an appropriate way to talk about it with our kids, but the reality is that the average age for a girl in the U.S. when they will be trafficked for the first time is only 13 years of age. If we ignore the issue and we don't talk about it until somebody turns 18, now we're looking at 5 years of trafficking where they could have gotten help, right? And boys are not immune to this issue either. In fact, boys at the age of only 11 years old, even younger. And these are our kids. These are our grandkids. These are the kids that you see in school if you're a teacher or you work at a school. These aren't just somebody else's kids. Every town, no matter how big or how small, has a victim or more than just one of trafficking. It's not just a big city issue. I know we're in the metro right now, but it's small towns as well. We do school assemblies around the country. And every single school that we have been to, we have rescued a kid out of human trafficking. Big cities, small towns. We were in Joplin just a couple years ago where a student at the end of the assembly, we do basically what an altar call. You guys know what that is, right? But we can't call it that because we're in schools. But we play music, and at the end of the assembly, we've all shared our stories. We have a survivor of trafficking that shares her story, a survivor of a suicide attempt that shares his story. And at the end of the assembly, we invite every student down to the gym floor. We tell them, we have told you our story. Now we want to hear yours. For students, that's a big deal because somebody actually wants to hear their story. Somebody cares about their experience. And on the count of 3, we invite every student in that gymnasium to rush to the gym floor, and we roll out this white piece of paper where they have an opportunity to write out their story, to share what has been happening in their life, many of them for the very first time. And at the end of every assembly, 95% of those students come down to the gym floor. If you've ever worked with junior hires, you never know how it's going to go, right? But they come down and share their story. And in Joplin, as I said a couple years ago, we had a student come down to the gym floor. He wrote a story on a piece of paper, and then he talked to our team. He said, "Can I talk to you in the hallway?" And he says, "I never knew before today, but I've been trafficked for the last 7 years of my life. Starting at the age of 10. He said, "I never knew that this was happening to me because my mom is the one that forced me into this. I thought this was normal. I thought this was what every person went through growing up. I thought it was just normal." He said, "I grew up in the car as my mom would go from truck to truck at the truck stops in Joplin, selling herself. But eventually," he said, "when I was about 10 years old, the drugs had done too much, that she got turned away by every trucker that night." He said, "I remember when my mom came to the car and she said, 'Stephen, I need you to come with me.' He said, 'I remember the truck like it was yesterday. It was a red semi. The first time I was ever sold, and it would repeat itself weekend after weekend, night after night. This was his life. In America, people. Again, it's our kids, it's our grandkids. In fact, what I just described, the story I just shared, is familial trafficking. It's the leading form in our country right now. It's not some stranger trafficking some stranger. It's mom or dad or step-parent or somebody that knows this individual very well, this kid, that starts exploiting their own child. Most of the time, it connects to a drug addiction that somebody has. But the U.S. is 36% of trafficking is familial. Minnesota, it's 42%, higher than the national average. So as we got into this ministry, As was mentioned, I was a youth pastor. I co-founded this organization. We were trying to figure out how do we, first of all, reach and identify victims, and how do we get them out of the life? Because there's not very many manuals out there, right, of how to do it. And what we knew how to do was feed people, right? That's Ministry 101, right, Pastor Jim? Feed people, people show up. And so we were working in Vegas. We still work down there a lot. I still live in Minnesota, but our team travels into Vegas multiple times a year to reach the community, the vulnerable apartment complexes of the city. We've adopted 5 of these apartment complexes where they pay their weekly rentals. They pay cash on Friday. Not a whole lot of background checks are happening. And when we went to these places and told them what we wanted to do, the security guard, and he tells it to us every time at the one property, he's like, I'm not sure if you want to be here. He said, this is a very dangerous part of town. He's like, people get arrested here every single week. We bring a body bag out of this property every single week. People are getting killed. And we love to look at him and say, that's exactly where we want to be. In the darkest places of our country, to find the kids and the young women that need desperate help. But we also are not just a humanitarian work, right? We need to have the gospel with what we do. And so with this thing, as you saw in the pictures, we grill. This one apartment complex has 4,000 people in the one complex. I don't like my neighbors enough for that. Maybe you do, but... and we just give away food, and we give away toys, and we do chalk on the sidewalk, and we do massive water fights. And one of our goals of that outreach is to let kids be kids for 2 hours. A couple months ago, we went and knocked on an apartment door to tell them, hey, this grill out's happening, free food, toys. And this young mom answers the door. She said, how long will you be here? And we said, probably 2-3 hours, it just depends on. And she hands us her 2-month-old child and says, here, watch my child. I'm going to go get high. Now, as you saw, I have children. I'm sure you all are great people, but I would not hand you my child and walk away. So for 3 hours, we had this young kid in our custody, if you will. And at the end of the grill out, mom didn't come back. As we talked to the office, they said, oh, she does that all the time. We know who to call. Obviously, social workers got involved. But that's what these kids are growing up with. Many times we'll be doing these grill outs, and the dads will be standing around the edge watching their boys throw footballs or whatever. And they'll say, I haven't seen my kid smile like this in months. Just bringing Jesus in a practical way. Sharing the love of God with kids right where they are. We also search for missing kids as another ministry outlet that we do. Now, many people think, when they think trafficking, if I were to poll you today, you would say it's abductions and kidnappings. Am I right? Most of us think these kids are getting taken from the Mall of America, being thrown in semi-trailers, whatever the movie that came out 3 years ago told you, right? Or the news. But in fact, less than 1% of trafficked kids are ever taken or abducted. It's less than 1%. When most of us think that's the majority. So why do we look for missing kids? Because runaway kids become trafficked kids. It's not the abductions and the kidnappings. In fact, it's 68% of runaway kids will be approached by a trafficker in the first 72 hours. Time is critical. So we go to Vegas and many other parts of the country and search for these missing kids. And we go door to door in strategic neighborhoods, handing out their flyers, thousands of flyers in an afternoon. And if you want to go to the next slide, this is one of the cases that we worked just a couple months ago. This young boy had been missing for 8 days by the time we got the case. And as we went to the neighborhood where we had intel on, handing out these flyers, we ended up knocking on his own house, right? His mom and sisters are pictured right there. And as we knocked on the door, they say, oh, that's my kid that you're looking for. And some of our team was a couple blocks away knocking and handing out flyers. And as we were standing there with mom and sisters, we got the phone call from one of our team members that we have the kid. We had found him just a couple blocks away. He had ran away from home. I think his mom took his Xbox as a story, right? Got mad. Ran away from home and was sleeping on a couch just a couple blocks away. But as we get down to the details of the story, he tells us, in order for me to have a couch to sleep on, there were strings attached. There were things I was forced to do with the dad of that household in order to have a spot to sleep. He was trafficked for 8 days of his life. And as we're standing there with the mom, she says, "Why do you care?" Talking to us. Like, why would you fly in from Colorado and Minnesota, and we had volunteers from Minnesota that week? Why would all of you come into Vegas and look for my kid? Why do you care? And I don't know about you guys, you might do Bible studies about Revelations, but we don't use the book of Revelations on the street that much, right? We love simple gospel. The simple parables that Jesus would share, of sharing the story with the mom, of Jesus leaving the 99 for the one. It might seem like Sunday school for you, but to somebody that has never stepped foot in a church, it's life-changing. That because Jesus left the 99 for me, it compels us to do the same. To leave the four walls of the church, to go after those that are literally missing, and to bring them home. This family is now involved in an incredible Assembly of God church in Vegas. Their life has completely transformed. Why? Because some random guy decided to quit his youth pastor job 7 years ago and say, I'm going to do whatever I can do to find those that need help. Another outreach that we do is through technology. Everybody love technology, right? We just did this in Kansas City about a month ago around the World Cup, and we've done it in Minnesota twice now, in central Minnesota, where we go on the dark net and we search for victims. As we go on the dark net and we begin conversations with these victims, in Kansas City it was 1,700 victims in 2 nights. In Minnesota, it was 1,600 victims that we reached in 1 night. Is there trafficking in Minnesota? Absolutely. And as we start conversations with them and offer prayer and offer resources and offer help, anything that they will take, right? You get to hear their stories of where they're coming from, what has happened in their life. If you want to go to the first screenshot, it says, "Thank you so much. This made me very sad, but I'm fine. Thank you. These are probably the prayers of my parents who are pastors of a church. I know they have me in their prayers. I grew up in the church, and even if you don't believe it, I was even baptized. I know God has great purposes for me, but everything comes in His own time. Thank you so much. I would appreciate it if you could pray for me." Remember when I said it's our kids? I wonder who her Sunday school teacher was that taught her every Sunday. I wonder who her youth pastor was that went to youth camp probably and didn't sleep very much. I wonder the people in the church that saw her grow up and now wonder what has happened to her, if they even know. The prayers of her parents. That night, this is in Minnesota, 5 victims called the hotline to get out. She was one of them. The prayers of her parents. Parents, keep praying for your kids. One more text. "Yeah, I'm struggling with paying my rent and addiction, and I'm wanting to get out of this lifestyle, so if you could pray for that, I would appreciate it greatly. I'm a single mother, and I'm just trying to make ends meet. I have been in this lifestyle for 17 years. I'm tired of it." Do you know the average lifespan of a victim is only 7 years? From the day they're first trafficked, like literally lifespan. From the trauma and the abuse, and many times drug addiction, or being killed, whatever it might be, 7 years is our clock. We only have 7 years to find that victim, to get them out, to get them help. I can't imagine 17 years, night after night, day after day, being sold, many of them 10 times a day. That is her life. As I said, we work in Vegas a lot. We work all around the country, but about 3 years ago, God started putting it on my heart and the other co-founder of what about Puerto Rico? It was separately, like God put it on my heart when I was there actually for a baby moon. I don't know if for you older people, millennials, do their last vacation before they have their first baby. Okay, that's what that is. But I saw with every island, every resort, if you've ever been to an island, you leave the resort and you go about 3 blocks and you see what the country or the territory really looks like. And I saw the poverty. I saw just all this stuff going on. And about 2 months later, I was talking with the other co-founder, and he said, what about Puerto Rico? And it was like God had put it on both of our hearts. So we flew down to Puerto Rico, met with the superintendent of the AG, which just means he's in charge down there, what that means. And we told him what we did, and he looks at us and he said, I have been praying for 2 years for you to come. We have women, we have young girls in our churches that are ending up being trafficked. We need help, and I simply don't know what to do. And so as we went down there and we began kind of exploring what God would have us do, we identified that we don't want to be the ministry that comes in and says, we know how to do it better than you, right? We identified Puerto Ricans that were already doing good ministry and said, how can we help you make it great? What do you need in order to bring it to the next level? And one of the churches wanted to do a gala to reach traffic victims. If you look at Puerto Rico statistics, you probably won't. I'm the stats guy, you're not. It would tell you that there is no trafficking in Puerto Rico. They've had one convicted case of trafficking in 10 years, so therefore there must not be trafficking. But the first time we went down there, again, we left 2 blocks away from the resort area, and there was 2 streets lined up with young girls for sale. You don't usually see that in the U.S. You see that in other countries. And so it was obvious that trafficking was happening. So the church wanted to reach them. They said, what if we did a catered dinner with music and a speaker and invited all of these victims? Specifically, they had a heart for the LGBTQ community that was being trafficked in that town. And they said, what if we could reach them? And we said, let's do it. So they went out, handed out the invites, handed out a flower, said, hey, Friday night we're going to have this gala. And we didn't know how it would turn out, right? You never know. But if you go to the next slide, 25 victims showed up at a church on a Friday night to be loved on. Not only that, but to hear a clear presentation of the gospel. It wasn't hellfire and brimstone, I can guarantee you that. But it was that Jesus loves you and calls you into something else. At the end of that night, 5 of them raised their hands for salvation and have changed their life as a result. When you think of missions, what is missions? Missions is when we leave the church and we reach the people that would never end up at the church without you. Right? There's people in our communities that will hopefully someday walk through those doors because they get an Easter invite or a random social media ad, whatever it might be. But there is a large group of people in our country that will not show up to a church unless somebody goes and finds them where they are. Not just trafficking, but many different scenarios. That is what missions is, being willing to go into the awkward, the darkness, the spaces where we really don't want to be, but that God has called us to reach into. Another part of our ministry in Puerto Rico was, again, identifying ministries and helping them. We identified a school down there, a Christian school, that after the hurricanes, 65% of the schools never reopened 9 years ago. You can imagine there's a problem there. The school opened, but the problem is they would lose power once a week, and they would also lose water once a week, and it wasn't always on the same day. They had solar panels. They can go outside for school, but when the toilets quit flushing, it's a problem, folks, right? And so we have this massive project that we need, and we have to send kids home from school once a week, every single week, because simply we don't have water. And so we installed a water retention system. They said it'd be a major project, and we said, how much? It was $5,000. For them, that's like keeping them awake at night, right? But we were able to install that back in August of last year. We were down there again in January. They lost water the day that we were there, but school was still functioning because of those tanks. Simple things. And then as we worked with Teen Challenge, you guys know Teen Challenge? We love them, right? They have Teen Challenge in Puerto Rico. They didn't have a detox center for their women's home. Their men's home had one, but the women's home did not. And so they were having to send the women that were wanting to go through the program to a hospital to go through the medical detox process. And 95% of them would walk out the door of the hospital and never make it to Teen Challenge, ending up back in the life that they knew. So it was a major problem. And again, we fight trafficking. So what we do has to be in that lane, right? Because there's a million things that you can do. So we met with the director about this, and we said, how many of your women have been trafficked in this program? The director said, I've been here 10 years. I've yet to find a young girl that has not been trafficked in this program. In Puerto Rico, it's well known that if you're a young girl with a drug addiction, you will be trafficked. It's just, everyone knows that. And so it was a problem. And so as we started working with them, we were able to, back in February, open this brand new detox program 10 feet away from their other building. That now, as we're speaking, has 6 girls in there this week that are going through the medical program, the medical process. And they've had dozens of girls go through the process already that are now in the actual Teen Challenge home, changing their life. Right? That's what it's about. And then we told God, anybody ever tell God anything? It goes really good. So we just did these 2 major projects. We're going to take this year off as far as, fundraising for these big projects. And then we audibly heard God laugh. You ever have that, right? And so we're down there, and the superintendent calls us into a meeting, and he said, hey, I was just given this house from a donor, from a lady, but she said it has to be a trafficking rescue home. And he looked at us and said, you're the only organization I know of that can get it done. Anybody ever too good at your job, and then you just get more work, right? And so we said, yes. How do you say no, right? And so somebody gave us this house. It's kind of like when somebody wants to donate couches to the youth department. It's never the nicest couch. All right, quit doing that, people. Same thing with the house. It needs some work. And so we just had a team of 30 people down there in last month, July. If you want to go to the next slide, we got the thing painted. It's not done, okay? We're still going to do some more painting. The entire inside is painted in December. The electrical and plumbing is going in, pending finances, all right? That's going to go in December, and we're hoping by this time next year it is open. It's a 6-bedroom, 3-bathroom house. And it'll be the first of its kind in Puerto Rico. The problem that we've had is when we do pull a young woman off the streets, where do you send them? You can't just say good luck and have fun. When you rescue a victim, it is a 10-year process that you walk alongside that victim and help them through their trauma, help them with their apartment when they need it, buy them that couch when they need it. Why? Because if you just rescue them and abandon them, what do they know? They're going to end up back in the life. And as we started dreaming about what this might be, this rescue home, and we found out there's none of them in Puerto Rico, God kind of spoke to me in my prayer time about this house. And it was this thing of, he said, it's not just about the girls. It's not just about the first 6 women that are going to go into that house the day that we open it. But he said it's about their kids. It's about their grandkids. He said, you're changing family trees by just simply having a bed for a girl for 2 years to go to church every Sunday, to live alongside mentors that have been through it as well. It's not just about the one girl. It's generations of families that you're going to change through this rescue home. That's what it is. And that's what God has called us to do. I'll say, if you feel compelled to be a part of this, if you feel compelled to see those first 6 girls enter that program, hopefully this time next year, if you want to give to it, we need to raise about $30,000 right now to get it to the next step. So if you want to give to that, you can connect with me after service as well. But now I'm going to preach a sermon, all right? So we're going to get into that real quick, a brief sermon this morning. As I said, I like the simple gospel because sometimes we like to overcomplicate the gospel, right? So we're going to look at Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 37 very quickly this morning. It's the story of the Good Samaritan. Anybody ever heard it before? Right? I think it's good sometimes to look back at Scripture that we've known a long time, to see what God would speak to us in it. So I'm going to go ahead and start. It says, on one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law, he replied. How do you read it? He answered. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind. And love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this, and you will live. but he wanted to justify himself. Anybody ever try to do that, right? I know I'm not a perfect Christian, but I'm not like that other person at church, right? We've all been there. So he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? He's like, hopefully it's just the people I like, the people that vote the same way as me, right? The people that I can actually hang out with, right? Just the people I want. In reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. I want you to realize those two people were the people that were supposed to do something. Like they were called by God. They were in ministry. Like they were supposed to do something, but they went by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him, but kept on walking. Right? Is that what he did? No. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, poured on oil and wine. Then he put the man in his own Tesla or donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, which is 2 days' salary, and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, go and do likewise. We've heard that story before, I'm sure. But I want to pull 3 points out of this scripture for us today. Point number 1 is this: pity doesn't save lives. We can have pity on a lot of things. Any of you ever watch TV too late at night? And that god-awful commercial comes on, In the Arms of the Angel? I'm not going to sing it, right? And there's always these dogs, and somehow they get the dog to cry, like you see an actual tear. I don't know how they do it. I've never seen my dogs do it, okay? And then they show the cats, the dogs, okay? Maybe you love cats, but I always say, we have 2 dogs, my wife has 2 cats, okay? So that's how our marriage works. But I have a lot of pity for those animals. I love animals, okay? And maybe you're a better person than me. But do you know how many times I've donated to save those animals? 0, right? I have pity for them. I hope somebody helps them. But does my pity change that dog's life? No. I think so often we can have pity, or I'd even dare say empathy for something, but that doesn't take any action. It doesn't require me to do anything, but compassion does. When you have compassion for something, it requires you to get up out of your seat and do something, to change something, right? We love to say, I hope someone does something about that. Well, I'm telling you, that's God calling you to do something about what you see. Point number 2 is living on mission takes time and resources. I don't know if you know this, but in Bible times, you didn't grab your donkey and go on a Sunday afternoon drive, okay? If you were going from one city to the next with your donkey, you were going on a mission. You had a reason. You were going from one spot to the other. They didn't just do it for fun. This guy was busy, right? And in America, we love to wear this badge on our shirt that says busy, right? How many of you? Man, how you been? I do it too, okay? But our first answer is, I've been so busy. It's like pride for us. Like, I'm important. I'm busy, right? We love to be busy. But I want to challenge you this morning, if I can. You guys good with that? I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to challenge you this morning. Let God wreck your schedule this week. Maybe you're type A. I'm type A. I have a calendar and another calendar, and I have spreadsheets upon spreadsheets. I know what's going to happen in the next 10 years of my life, but then God messes it up, okay? But I'm one of those people that everything is scheduled. I would challenge you to pray, and we're going to here in a little bit. God, mess up my schedule this week. And look for that moment where, man, I got to get to the grocery store, but there's this person in front of me that needs somebody to listen. I got to go get the kids to summer camp or whatever it might be, but let's take a moment and see what's the most important thing in front of me at the moment. I fully believe, like in this story, the best ministry is whatever's in front of you. Many times we're like, oh, I need to go to the church to do this. And please do it. I'm not telling you don't show up, right? They need you to show up. But we think we have to come to the church to do ministry. But in the meantime, we passed by 3 people on the way here that needed us just to listen for a little bit. When you went to the gas station and you saw the person's eyes, do you ever look in somebody's eyes? By the way, I would recommend it. It tells you a lot about their story. When you see the sorrow and the sadness in their eyes and they say, oh, I'm doing good, maybe ask a follow-up question. Be available. Be willing to sit with somebody that needs you to sit with them. It takes time and resources. He didn't just drop them off at the inn and say, good luck, right? He literally gave money. And then he literally said, I will cover the bill at the end if it's not enough. Can you imagine doing that now? Obviously, prices are out of control. But can you imagine? He said, whatever it takes. He didn't know this guy. He had no obligation to this guy. He had no reason why he would have had to do it, but he had compassion. And point number 3, as I close, go and do likewise. I love it when parables and scriptures end with that statement. Why? Because it isn't just for this guy that was trying to justify himself. It's a command for you and I to go and do likewise. It doesn't say to go to pastor school first. It doesn't say to read through the Bible 17 times first. It doesn't say any of that. All it says is to go and do likewise. Everyone is called to go. Now, maybe that's Africa. Maybe that's across the road, right? What is God calling you to do, to go and be, to reach our communities? So to wrap up, don't have pity, have compassion. Give of your time and your resources to the ministry that God puts on your heart, and to go and do likewise. Again, if you want to meet with me at the table, if you want to support our Rescue Home Project, or you want to give to us monthly, I would love to connect with you, but I'm going to close in prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for this morning. Lord, I pray that you would speak to us. Lord, I pray for those that are willing, Lord, that you would mess up our schedules a little bit. That you would put somebody right in front of us this week, that we would know without a shadow of doubt that you are calling us to speak into their life. That you are calling us to do something for that person. Lord, that we would be open and available, that we'd be obedient to the hurt and the pain that's around us for the people that just need somebody. Lord, would you put it on our heart to make a difference around us? In your name, amen.
Thank you so much, Caleb and Brittany, for being here this morning.